We're back for another edition of the Vandy Program. I've got my good friend Andrew Donaldson on. He's becoming a media darling in his own right. He is ubiquitous. And now that I've, yeah, and now that I've buttered him up enough, we're trying something new on the program this week, and we're calling it the news of the day. And we've picked a pretty interesting day to try this, the news of the day thing, because it is Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. It has been a crazy 24 hours that I have seen some people say, gee, I wonder if this is what the Bay of Pigs was like.
Oh, bad example.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's no. But I did get at least one person asking me if Trump was going to use nukes last night. So that's probably a good place for us to start. Andrew, welcome to the program, and how the heck are you?
Good to talk to you, buddy. I know we've talked on and off for a while and been social media buddies for a while, so it's cool to do some media with you. I appreciate the invite. Yeah, luckily it's a slow news day. I was joking earlier. I was like, I think this is the busiest media week I've had that's not like an election with things. It's just like bookings and people wanting you to come on and talk. Like it's been nonstop the last couple of days. It's really amazing how much this has hit, at least in our little corner of the internet.
And part of it, I think, started with the rescue. And I know
Yes.
you went on online to talk about the rescue that was a pretty large undertaking. But
Yeah.
you had thoughts, and you're a veteran, and your thoughts are probably going to be maybe a little different than some of the rest of the world. But give me your original initial reaction when you saw the news and then the press conference after the rescue.
Yeah, the news was great. Number one, because the first thing, there's a generation gap on this story, by the way, and you and me are kind of at the same age, give or take. The ghost of the Iranian hostage crisis. The younger generations don't understand how traumatic that was, and I'm too young to remember it firsthand. But I'm an '80s baby. It was talked about constantly. And if you're old enough to remember the first Gulf War, a lot of the talk of the first Gulf War was we don't want another Iranian hostage. And, we wiped the floor with Saddam, but people didn't know it ahead of time. The ghosts of the Iranian hostage crisis in Desert One and Operation Eagle Claw, where they tried to go in and get them, and it was a disaster, and we lost multiple people, and it was embarrassing. That really was a traumatic national experience for a lot of Americans and for the military. And the military came back. That's how we got JSOC. That's how we redid combat search and rescue, a lot of special forces stuff that was already in the process of being rebuilt after Vietnam, and a military that was rebuilding and recreating itself after Vietnam. That was one of the key moments of, all right, we're stripping this down to nothing, building it from scratch and doing it right. And then you see that come full cycle in a rescue mission that is very, very similar to Desert One, where they went in, temporary airstrip, set up, get the guy, get out, and it went flawlessly. Like that, I've used the example. If you're going to write a movie, that movie writes itself. You have the disaster at the beginning, and then they pull it off almost the same mission at the end, little different. It's such a brilliant story, and it shows you just the insanely amazing professionalism capabilities of the United States military. Look, we know publicly, probably 10-15% of what was involved here, and that's probably a high number. I cannot wait until we get all the details. And remember, folks got to understand, we're just now declassifying stuff from Iraq, because most of that stuff's usually 25-year disclosures. So it's going to be a long time before you get all of the details on this. But when we do, it's going to be remarkable. But yeah, the story writes itself. So it's in one way, it's laying to rest the ghost of the previous generation, while also bringing up the current ghost, which is tactically, we win every battle you ever ask the U.S. military to win. We will win on the battlefield. Strategically, what we were doing, that's the questions that are up in the air, and it throws it in relief. It's like, look how professional our military is. Does our civilian leadership know how to effectively use that military? And you have all those things in that one little story. We're both media guys, we're both writers, we're both broadcasters. That story writes itself, and it just leads right into the news story. And I think it caught everybody's imagination of like, this is great. Why did we have to do this in the first place, and what does it mean now? And that just resonates with everybody. And so brilliant job by the military, great job by the chain of command saying whatever you need, you're going to get it. President Trump on down gets the credit for that one. And now we deal with the after effects. And General Kane said it in the press conference. He said, we're not going to talk about this in case we have to do this again. Now, hopefully, we have the ceasefire and we won't have to do that again, hopefully, because it worked brilliantly. There's just everything you want in what's going on now, what's going on historically. It's all right there in that story. And it's just the perfect way to talk about the current events in a historical context that also tells you, man, we're in some uncharted territory right now.
Yeah, and the uncharted territory is what I think we'll focus most of our discussion on this morning. And so what I'm doing is attempting, this is a new thing for any of regular viewers of this program, in that I am about to share my screen. And now, let's face it, everyone's shared their screen on Teams, and everyone's had some sort of misstep at some point. I have closed any dangerous tabs, so that is that's not going to be a concern right now. But let me see if we can pull this off, because what I wanted to do was, let's see, window. Okay, share. News of the day. There it is.
Look at that.
Yes,
Stop.
there it is.
Technology.
It's something else. Yeah, it's something else. So, yeah. So we're going to talk about the news of the day as the news of the day is happening. And here's the first slide. I figured this would be a great introduction to Andrew. This is a tweet from Andrew just a little bit ago.
Using my own tweets against me.
Yes, exactly. So before we dive in on everything that's going on this Wednesday morning, walk us through what what you're up to these days, and what keeps you busy.
I'm actually doing more media this week than I've done in a long time because it's spring break. I'm actually in school. Last year I found out I had a couple of years of GI Bill left over, so I went back to culinary school just to keep my soul clean from doing politics all day. So I've been doing culinary school, which has been great. A lot of very busy family time right now. My youngest is getting ready to graduate high school. She'll be the youngest, last one out of high school. She's overseas on her spring break trip right now. I got to go pick her up on Friday. Oldest kid and her husband were just down to do the gender reveal. We're having our first grandchild here in September. So busy time of life. And then professionally, it's been interesting because I've doing my writing and my media, and I'm very blessed to get to do TV and radio. Herdtailmedia.com, one-stop shopping for all that. For the Fire on the Twitter. But then at the end of life comes at you quick. I had to do a bunch of caregiving in the fall for my kids' paternal grandfather who's got Parkinson's and dementia. Both has to be cared for pretty much full time. And then last day of the semester, I found out I had colon cancer, so I've been dealing with that. Things are going well. Had surgery back in January. We'll go back here in a couple of weeks, start looking at it again. But I'm doing very well. Going as well as it can possibly go. Got good prognosis, got excellent doctors, but it is never a dull moment, my friend. So it's one of those great things of like, yeah, there's all this major stuff going on in the world, but you also have to balance it with, really good family time and really challenging family time. And you got to understand as broadcasters and media people, yeah, this is how everybody deals with this. So they'll see the news, but they got their own stuff going on. I think it's good to be grounded. So yeah, I go to culinary school to keep my head on, and I deal with real people all day. And then hopefully that gives me a better perspective when I go on, programs like this and talk about the world events, that I've got a little bit of a connection to the real world at the same time.
That's awesome. And I'm glad to hear you're doing well, because you got a lot of friends out here on the internet.
I appreciate
that are pulling for you. So the first tweet that I pulled up, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, but he's one of the people that I've been checking in on since the beginning of this Iran war. Shanaka Anselm Pereira. He seems to have his finger on the pulse enough, and or he is sharing a lot of commentary on Substack. This, generally speaking, talks about the negotiations that were at play here, and that what, five nations running a simultaneous back channel operations in a single day. And then he continues to talk about that there's in the middle paragraph that Iran's uranium will be perfectly taken care of. And this is a total and complete victory, 100%, no question about it. So I have thoughts. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, so we'll go back to you and I. I have thoughts on the fact that this seems a little early for a complete and total victory, and for us to be declaring victory, because it reminds me of George W. Bush in the second Iraq War, declaring victory, mission accomplished, all that fun stuff. And,
Yeah.
really, was it?
Yeah,
Your
I
thoughts on
remember I
that?
was there.
Yeah, and your thoughts on that from somebody who's got that point of view.
Yeah, I was literally deployed the day he said that. We were kind of joking about it. We were on a TDY somewhere not pleasant, like, it doesn't feel like we done here. It looks like we're kind of in the middle of it. Yeah, hopefully we all learned from that one a little bit. We need to be very clear if you got to read between the lines when President Trump puts out a social media post, because he, goes to F to get from A to B. He even said it in his post, like they have agreed to a framework to talk about what we're not even to the negotiation part. We've agreed to a framework of what you're going to have the meeting about the negotiations. This was mostly the administration and President Trump mostly farmed this out to third parties to do it, like you just mentioned. Especially the Pakistanis, the Turks were involved, the Egyptians were involved, but the Pakistani prime minister was the front man for all of this. So the plan that they're going to agree to talk about, maybe having a negotiation about, let's put it that way, is this 10-point plan. I got to say it again because it's just so funny. The Iranian, and President Trump sent this out himself, which is funny. The Iranian said, well, actually, we sent you 15 points, but you agreed to 10, so we'll work off 10. That's how nuts this whole thing is right now. So the 10-point plan, which has been on the table for at least 8 days, as far as I can tell, going back, it's important to understand, and you are 100% correct, this is just the framework to talk about it. Now, two things can be true at once. We don't know a lot, and this is a framework. President Trump taking the off-ramp at this juncture was the right thing to do based on the circumstances we are. And we can criticize and go, yeah, this is the circumstances he created and all that. In the moment, he did the right thing and backed off and took the off-ramp, and let's do some negotiation. Now, is that going to cost us down the line? Is that going to have repercussions? Yeah, probably. But both things are true. You took the least of the bad options and took the off-ramp, and I think he should, and I said he should, and I have to give him credit when he does what I think he should do, which is take the off-ramp. What to watch for here is now who's going to be doing these negotiations. If it's Wyckoff and Kushner and the Pakistanis, and the biggest piece of this that Western media has done a horrible job covering is the GCC. What are they going to do? The Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, the Omanis. What are they going to agree to? What is Israel going to agree to? Because they've come out and said, well, this doesn't include Hezbollah. Well, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy. That can be a problem. Start watching if these negotiations actually happen, if there's actually a big agreement, or is this going to be one of those things we've seen some other places, like down south recently, where we say we're going to do this big change, but then it basically goes back to the status quo very quietly with a couple of modifications. I think that's kind of what the Trump administration's thing is like, okay, we can declare victory, step back, let nature take its course, and this will go back to something like the status quo. The problem is the Iranians and the Strait of Hormuz, they pulled out the big stick that they have, the only stick they have, which is closing the strait, and it worked and they won with it. And they still control it as of this morning. So unlike, a Venezuela situation, you have the opposing people, not just, next dictator up kind of thing. They've still got the biggest weapon they've got on the playing board. And that's what's going to change this. So I think everybody's hoping for a status quo return. I don't think you're going to get a status quo return because Iran's going to want some stuff to open that strait up.
And so one of the questions, and I don't have the tweet in front of me, so I won't pull it up. But one of the questions I've got is how much. First of all, I watch a lot of Sky News. I love Sky News. Too. It's great to get an international perspective. Yes, they hate Trump. You can tell they hate Trump, but you know that at least their bias is up front, right?
That's not their business model. It's just
yeah. One of the things that does drive me crazy about Sky News specifically is they show that map of the Strait of Hormuz all the time, and I can't read that map. Yes, I understand that this is water and these are ships, but they don't really tell you, hey, the little green arrows mean this and the little red arrows mean this, and there's a whole bunch of these or a whole bunch of those. I can't tell what's going on. The tweet I was going to mention was talking about the fact that there's been a lot of underground, behind the scenes, surreptitious passage going on that we don't get reports on and or can't really tell is happening. So for instance, it's somebody's paying the freight literally and figuratively so that a Chinese or a vessel in China's best interest can make it through, but yet someone else has to kind of park over here and wait. So here's my question. Are we ever going to know, or are we easily going to know whether or not the strait is actually open?
Yeah. Good question. When we're talking about the strait, you're talking about, of course, geographically what the strait is, and I know the map you're talking about because it's the upside down one. Because So, and they do the other one they do where it's zoomed in, where it's just the narrowest point, which is 20 some odd miles wide. But remember, the shipping channel is only about 6 miles wide, so it's even narrower than that. Sal from Campbell University does a good job. Everybody should be following him. He's an expert on these shipping lanes. He does a daily thing. Follow him. He'll explain all this way better than I can. So follow Sal. Long story short, there's three kinds of traffic right now. There's the traffic that backed up and just stopped because they didn't know what to do. There's the traffic that the Iranians have back channeled and told go ahead and go through, either tacitly or bluntly, like you can go through, go ahead and go, and you can see those. And then there's people that are just turning their responders off and doing it and YOLOing it and doing the Leroy Jenkins. We've seen a couple of those because some of those freight companies are looking at that like $2 million, or if it comes through, or once they get the insurance, they're like, screw it, let's go. So there's been some of that where they just turn it off, run it anyway, turn it back on. Those are all open-ended questions. Here's the problem. There is no, legally, you're not allowed to close the Strait of Hormuz because it's a freedom of the seas navigational waterway. Practically, the Iranians, because of the terrain and the choke point in that little loop map that you're talking about, when they zoom in, it doesn't make sense. When you zoom out, it looks like a colon, frankly, because I've been looking at a lot of pictures of colons lately. You have that little dip on the point where you go around. That's the narrowest point, and that's where Iran has the strait surrounded on three sides tactically, basically. So if you're going to hit them with drones or underwater UAVs or missiles or whatever, that's, they can get at you from multiple ways from that point. That's the issue. What to watch for, and this is why I watch international news a lot. And like Sky News, I know their bias. I know what they're going to say. If I watch Al Jazeera, I know that's the Qataris. They got bias too, but they also have, really good resources on this stuff. I know Al Arabia's, same thing, right on down the line. Just know the bias of what you're watching. Be an adult, filter it yourself. If you watch the international news and you have international sourcing and you follow people in shipping, you're going to see this backlog of the ships that just sat for the last couple of weeks come flying out of there. That's not really what to watch for. Then in logistics, we have what's called bullwhip effects. This is a bull, you have to whip, when you pull a bullwhip, it winds up and then it strikes, right? This is going to be the wind up. And then in a couple of weeks, all that'll hit, the East Coast or Asia or wherever it's going. Those ships will hit, and then you get the rest of the bullwhip effect where they will release their cargo and then the market adjusts again. While that's going on simultaneously, we have to find out what the new normal in the strait is, which is what's the traffic flow going to be compared to before? Who's controlling it? Are they charging? I hate the toll booth analogy, but everybody understands what it is, so I know why the media is saying it. Saying there's no toll booth. They're not pulling a ship up to a toll booth, folks. They're not. But are they going to charge tolls? Is there going to be this, serendipitous economy where they start taking cuts of it, that sort of thing? President Trump told Jonathan Karl today, like, well, that's going to be a joint. No, it's not. That would be bad on epic levels. I know he's a transactional president, but you have to worry about that sort of thing. It's going to be weeks and weeks and weeks before you know what the new normal is. So everybody needs to just kind of keep their head with this Strait of Hormuz stuff of there's going to be waves of this. We saw prices immediately go down last night when the ceasefire. That's the market. That's not shippers. That's not brokers. That's not the commodity markets. Those are all different things, and they're going to have a lot of ups and downs over the next couple of weeks. So this is one of those things where we all got to keep our bearing. Nobody knows what it's going to look like, and it's going to take a couple of weeks for this to all shake out. And in the meantime, you have the Iranians who are going to try to consolidate their position of running the strait, and we're in charge of it. You have America that's trying to save face without having to militarily recommit again. And you have the rest of the world who can't do anything about either one of those two parties deciding what they're going to do, trying to adjust to it and probably making a lot of noise that's not going to amount to a whole lot. So that's a big ball of mess for one little 20-odd mile piece of real estate on the globe, right? This is how world politics works, man. It's a choke point. They call it a choke point for a reason, and we're all going to economically choke on it for a little while.
And I noticed that a couple of things happened this morning. There was
yeah, record high yesterday, so that was kind of inevitable.
Yeah, and then there are also the precious metals markets had a nice little positive move this morning, like 5-6% or so. I haven't checked in the last little bit, but all of this stuff is then bringing into question, what's happening with the petrodollar. And is this so? I've actually, let's talk about the petrodollar for a second, because a lot of people don't know exactly what that means. But then you have the BRICS countries who are interested in forming some sort of other alliance. So, two-part question is are we nearing an end to the petrodollar system as we know it? And will we see an emergence of BRICS using some sort of alternative means of settling these trades?
Yeah, good question. BRICS can never replace what we're doing now, but what they want to do is put enough of a dent in it that they get more influence with it. China really, really wanted this ceasefire. For example, they were really leaning on everybody involved to get this ceasefire done. Remember, almost 80% of what's blocked up coming out of the strait, we just talked about, a lot of that was going to Asia. So the Asian countries were really getting it way worse than us. You're talking about 20% of all the LNG natural gas on the planet got held up instantly. And that's not a switch you can throw, because a natural gas pipeline, it's either on or it's off. There's none of this, so they gotta crank that back up from basically zero. It's going to take a little while. Same thing with the oil. We know the East-West pipeline got fired up, but that's, a fraction of what needs to come through the strait to keep the global economy going. And apparently it got hit by a drone this morning. I haven't had time to chase that fully down, but that's not good. So there's all those things. We need to back up just a second, though, and understand why Iran's such a thorn in everybody's side to start with. That is purposeful. When you talk about the Iran nuclear program, there's been a little bit of look, Iran cannot develop a nuclear weapon on their own. They can't, because if they did, they would have by now. They get that stuff from Russia and China. Russia and China has been smart enough to give them just enough to keep them on the hook, but not let them actually get there, because they want Iran to be a thorn in the side of all the other. Because remember, Russia is a petrochemical gangster terrorist state with state trappings around it. It's run like a mafia unit, because it is. Putin answers to the oligarchs, which are the head of the mafia, and and it's all fueled by the petro industry. That's how Russia functions. China does not have a petro industry that is that can be replaced without working with the Middle East and Russia and others. They've got to have that. So they like to use Iran as a thorn in the world side, specifically the Gulf Coast states side, specifically America's side, because as long as you're dealing with Iran, it throws a wrench in everything else. So that's why they support them militarily. That's why they support their nuclear program without letting them get all the way there, just enough to bug them, because they know if they get too close, the Israelis come in and bomb them, which they've done 3 or 4 times over the last 20, 30 years, et cetera, et cetera. So none of this is by accident. They always have used proxies like Iran to needle people. And this is why I was just to take a quick detour, because I think it really speaks to what's going on now in the leadership. This is why taking out Soleimani was such a big deal. He was really their strategic genius with, I can liaison with the Russians. I can make this sphere of influence out to Syria work. I can coordinate with the Russians and the Chinese and others on how to get global influence. So when we took them out, they've actually had a bit of a strategic power vacuum for the last couple of years since we took him out, and it shows. Like the October 7th stuff after that, they didn't know how to respond to it because they didn't have somebody that knew how to do that stuff. And you're seeing it now with the reduction further in their leadership. They're even further down the chain from Soleimani. That's where it really pays into, is how Russia and China deals with Iran. They don't trust them as much now. They know they don't have the leadership. All those pieces go into, when you just say oil, well, oil has that whole big funnel above it of why oil is important. And then you take the oil price itself. The crude oil barrel price is one thing. Is it sweet crude or heavy crude? Venezuela has heavy crude. It's 3 times as expensive and hard to produce it as Middle Eastern oil. That's why Venezuela is poor, because they don't have the refining capability. That's why when we went down there, they want the contracts for the refineries, not the oil fields. In the Middle East, you don't need to refine it as much, so you want the contracts for the oil itself, right? See the difference? Then there's the crude oil prices, then there's the shipping prices, then that's all before you get to the gasoline prices, kerosene prices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, go right on down the line. Jet fuel, fertilizer from the byproducts, plastics from the petrochemicals. This is all if you look at it, this is all an inverted pyramid, and the gas you put in your cars at the bottom of it, and all this geopolitical stuff's at the top of it, and it all goes down to that. So you are 100% correct when you talk about the BRICS piece of it, the Russia piece of it, the China piece of it, the rise of the GCC countries, which was made to counteract Iran specifically. And you have this amazing historical thing where the Israelis and the Americans and the GCC are all fighting Iran on the same side.
And GCC again is
Saudis, Oman, Bahrain, Qatar. I'm missing a couple, but you get the idea. The Emiratis. They put that together to counteract Iran. That's one of the main, also economically, but mostly to have some homogeny in defense and economic defense and military defense. We've seen them, they're mostly American bought air defense systems performed exceptionally well. Very, very, look, you can't shoot everything down. It's not possible. They performed very, very well. That's part of the GCC stuff where they have that interaction. So you're seeing a realignment here that's important. But with Iran being militarily diminished now, their role as far as geopolitical as a proxy for Iran and China and other bad faith actors to be an annoyance to us, that didn't go away out of this. In fact, I think long term it's probably going to raise it again in a little different way. So you're absolutely right to bring that up. I know that's a lot of dense information in one thing, but that's the piece you got to understand is it's not just gas prices. It's not just bombing Iran. It's all this other stuff feeding into what Iran is today and how the Iranian regime keeps power internally so that they're useful externally to keep getting fed their power. This stuff all goes together, man. You can't pull one piece out and not understand the rest of it.
Yeah, you mentioned fertilizer just a little bit ago, and I don't think a lot of people realize like the role of petrochemicals in. I mean, you think, and this is where I will expose myself as being more center right on some issues, but you talk about the net zero people or the net zero groups that are like, let's get rid of all fossil fuels, period. First of all, feasibly impossible. you can't do that. But secondly, there's so many iterations down that pyramid you talked about, and fertilizer and other byproducts that are used in the agricultural process. I mean, propane is propane used in farming, for instance, when there was a movement to try to tax that to the hilt here in the States. There was a lot of pushback from people in the farming community. They're like, no, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy, because that's just going to there will be, the backlash from that is going to be much more severe, the second order impact. And then you start talking about just shipping in general, and getting things from here to there, and what are the things that you're getting from here to there, and what becomes more important. But the big picture thing that I think you were alluding to might be that you've got BRICS on one side, which is Brazil, minimally important in this conversation right now. Russia, Iran, China. But sometimes you hear about, and then South Africa as kind of the other piece of it. The ability to put a dent in what's happening is kind of one of these long-term questions that we're going to have to get an answer to. So I want to talk a little bit about taco, because there seems to be I got the eye roll, so that's good. So there are quite a few people on the left who love this acronym of TACO, which stands for, I believe, Trump always chickens out. And now the question behind that is, what did he chicken out from? Because on the one hand, you've got people wondering if Trump was going to nuke Iran, which was not going to happen. And now they're claiming, and the Jimmy Kimmel monologue last night said as much, well, you were going to end civilization, but now you didn't. So you chickened out. But that doesn't make a lot of logical sense. So I want to get your thoughts on taco, and whether or not the left can meme, and what the thinking is behind that. We've lost your audio.
If I'm going to bash the president for being inconsistent, which he is, he does not do straight line thinking super great sometimes. That's fair, whether you like him or not. That's just how he works. If I'm going to bash him for being inconsistent and frankly incoherent sometime, the idea that you're going to make that meme, and this one is especially egregious, because it's like, so what did you want him to do? Start bombing civilians? That's the argument you're making. It's illogical. You can, and I've been doing it all. This is my third media hit today. I've been doing it all morning, literally. I can criticize the president and think that he probably lost esteem and backed off, and he's going to take a hit, both his brand and his style personally, for backing off here, while still saying it was the right thing for him to do. You put yourself in a bad position, you're just going to have to eat it and do it. That's the way to cover that. The silliness of the talk. Look, here's the thing about Trump that drives me nuts, both people that overly love him and think he does no wrong, and people that are utterly consumed with hating him to the point that they've lost their minds, because both of those extremes are unhealthy in a representative republic, and you shouldn't do either one of the two.
Agree 100%.
We have 50 years of book on who Donald Trump is. We have a book he wrote, well, he ghostwrote, but you get the idea. We have a book he wrote himself on himself. We know everything you need to know about how Donald Trump, the human being and man, functions, how he sees the world, how he does things. If you don't know how Donald Trump does things at this point, you didn't do the reading. Like, everybody knows how he's a transactional human being. He is a very self-absorbed human being. He is all about him and what he wants, and he's going to get it, and he's going to do maximum. Art of the deal is just a maximum leverage ploy. It's not unique. That's just how he branded it. If you don't know how Donald Trump functions, that's on you at this point. If you change who you are Here's why the taco thing drives me nuts. I know it's cute, but you can't apply it to this one because you needed him to back off. You needed him to back down. When the rhetoric gets to "I'm going to destroy civilization," we are no, Mr. President, come back over here. You've gone too far now. You need him to do that, right? So if you're just going to meme war and troll him right back, you have become the thing you're telling me you can't stand and hate about the guy, and then that's where you lose me. If you say, I can't stand how Donald Trump, the man, is and how he conducts himself, let me act exactly like him to show you how bad he is. And it goes the other way too, by the way. It's like, if you're just such a sycophant, you're going to just agree with everything because you have to. I've lost interest. And if you're going to do an election, the only thing, look, our Team Blue friends, I'm a registered independent. You can chisel that onto my voter registration card. Never going to change. Our Team Blue Democratic friends have everything possible going for them in this midterm election. The only thing holding them down is they are just as unpopular as the Republican Party and Donald Trump are, more so in some ways the Democratic brand, because they have a leadership vacuum too. You know, you need, if you're going to say Trump is unserious, and there's validity to the accusation, the way you get electoral votes and electoral credibility is not to be as unserious as he's being. You need to be more serious. You need to be the adults in the room. You need to contrast that. And too many of our friends on that side, especially and to be fair, the media and political media space is worse than what the general population is, so I don't want to broad brush everybody. You're not going to do any better just being, Trump but left. That's not going to work. But a lot of people are doing that because, and the dirty secret of all this Trump stuff and the dirty secret of why did we get Trump? Trump's good for business. Good if you're for him, if you're against him, he's good. He has been the only thing keeping the traditional media model alive as long as it has. We both work in this space. We both struggle in this space. Traditional media is the traditional news networks are done. The only thing propping them up right now is Donald J. Trump and campaign funding for advertisements. And pharmaceutical ads. I'm not. That's not a joke. That's not a bit. Those are the three things keeping it floating, or it'd already be over. He's good for business. So if you're just going to react to Trump all the time, it's going to be good for business in a declining business that's getting ready to go away. Is that a fair way to put it? So the taco thing is a very online thing that's very cute, and it's not going to get you a single vote, and it'll probably hurt you with voters if that's the route you go. Just say it plainly. The president went out over his skis claiming to bomb civilization. We knew he wasn't going to do it. He shouldn't have said it. It's awful. We will be more responsible in our rhetoric. Vote for us. That will get you things. Whatever Jimmy Kimmel's doing with the Taco Fest will make lots of TikTok videos, but it's not going to get you any votes. So what's your goal? Is your goal a business model where Donald Trump's good for your business model? Now you're a hypocrite because you're saying the thing that's horrible for the country, you want to keep going for your business model. Is that what you're going to tell me? Or do you want to try to platform some responsible people? And then there's some responsible GOP and independent people now coming out and saying it too. Which are you? I judge you by your actions. And if your actions is Donald Trump's the worst thing ever, but he's 90% of my content, then is he really the worst thing ever? No, he's not, because you just told me he's not. You just told me it's more important for him to keep doing what he's doing.
Well, so let's talk about Kimmel for a second, because it's a really interesting, it's really interesting to me that it appears he's attempting to mirror Colbert's playbook. And Colbert's playbook, last I checked, worked so poorly that he's going to be out of a job. So the question then is what is your business model if you're Jimmy Kimmel?
Kimmel's lane, let's do some inside television real quick, because I think it's important to understand, when I do media, we talked about Sky News a minute ago. We talked about these other networks. I think it's important for a consumer to understand the platform they're consuming. I'm pretty open about my stuff, my biases. Like, if you're consuming my content, here's what you're getting. We don't do that enough. So let's do this real quick. Kimmel's lane with ABC and Disney, who is the parent company of his show, he's the Hollywood insider guy. That's his lane. Everybody, he's friendly. He talks the lingo. If you're promoting a movie, if you're promoting a TV show, he's the Hollywood guy that all the Hollywood people know, and the Disney machine is behind him, and that's his role. And when he goes, and of course, most of those people's politics is on the left. That's no shame. But traditionally, he doesn't do a lot of that because his lane in late night has always been he's the Hollywood insider guy. He's the pipeline guy. I get all the biggest stars because I've got the stroke to do it. I'm based in LA. I know all the people. I'm funny enough. He is a funny guy, but he has his writers. You know, I remember him all the way back in the when Ben Stein's Money days. You know, I've been watching Kimmel a long time. He's a talented guy, but he plays that role well. This isn't going to play as well. And remember, the Colbert piece of this is they didn't shut him down for politics. They shut him down because the production cost was astronomical on that program. They were losing so much money producing that. That's why they shut it down. You know,
but the politics
plays into it, but it's, you can be, let's do a sports analogy. You're a sports guy. You know, your quarterback can have a drug problem nobody knows about as long as he's winning. The second he's not winning and we need to train him, all of a sudden the beat reporters find out he has a drug problem. Right? Like, we all know how this works. There's no such thing as a leak. It gets out when people want it to get out. So one of the problems that Kimmel and these guys are going to start having is they're going to be under tremendous pressure in this election year, and then in 2028, especially when we do presidential, because now we don't have Trump on the, you know, everybody's got to readjust their business model because Trump ain't around anymore. He's going to be under tremendous pressure to do more political because Colbert's gone. Colbert took that up, was being the political guy. Now he's gone. Kimmel's going to be under tremendous pressure to do that. But the more he does that, the more he's putting his own, and let's call it, and it's not his fault. He's just it's the old Tony Soprano line. Like, I feel like I came in on the end of it, right? He's on the end of it. He's going to be hurting his own self, but he's going to be under a lot of pressure to do that. At the same time, he's got to balance himself as the Hollywood guy that everybody can just see what the latest Marvel movie is. Those two things aren't going to coexist really well. How does he balance that? That's a challenge for him and his production staff, because they're going to be under pressure to do it. If it's what we saw on that clip, it's not going to go well because it wasn't that funny unless you... Here's the thing about funny with politics. One of my favorite shows of all time is Boston Legal. I'm going to get a 6-minute sermon on progressive ideology from Alan Shore at the end of this episode, and I know it. And it's going to be really well written, and I'm going to disagree with all of it, but I'm going to enjoy it because it's well written. That's what that character is supposed to do, right? It didn't bother me, even though it's politically against a lot of what I think the world works in. But when you have a late night host doing that, you see the difference? He's supposed to just be the funny guy. It's not that you can't talk politics. You can't talk politics and be unfunny and have an agenda that's also cringy. And the taco thing the comedy is subjective. The taco thing has gone into cringy now. It's like, okay, you're just saying it to saying it. Can you give me the breakdown on how the Strait of Hormuz is going to open up? Because I wanted Trump, if we're going to, let's beat the analogy to death. I wanted Trump to chicken out on this one. I didn't really want him to blow up every bridge in Iran, which he couldn't do anyway, but he said he was going to do, even though we can't do that. There's thousands of them. We weren't going to do that. I don't want him to actually end the most ancient civilization on the face of the earth, even though we weren't going to do that. I don't want him even saying that, thinking that, nothing. I want him to back off that. So what is your goal here? Well, my goal is to do good information, get it out, understand the times we live in, analyze that, and push forward. Is your goal to just play this role as an online troll with one hand, while on the other hand, you know, defaming the online trolls while you're being an online troll? That's where our media, news media, political media space is right now. A lot of that's Trump's fault, to be fair, but you're in control of how you react to it. So if Jimmy Kimmel's going to do the taco skits, I don't think that's going to, it'll probably play really well through this election because he'll get the seal clap in group stuff, but long term, I don't think it's viable at all. I think he'll go the way of Colbert for maybe different reasons. I don't think you're helping yourself with it. Number one, be funny. If you mock me and it's funny, okay, you got me. Number two is, if it's just politically driven because you think that's the model, you're going to have a real short runway with a declining audience.
This is probably why Gutfeld has done as well as he's done.
He's got an audience.
He's got an audience.
To the audience for it.
He's got a lane. It's a well-established lane.
But he has Tarlov sitting there. And he has
He's
I'm glad you brought this up because people bring up Gutfeld. And he's kind of really gone off the edge of the table with his bitterness, frankly, from what he used to be when I first started watching him. He's at least playing off somebody in the room that's saying something different. The problem with late night is it's a bully pulpit. And Colbert turned the bully pulpit into a sermon that was way too long and the chicken dinner's burning. Right? You see the difference?
Yeah.
Gutfeld, to his credit, he's got somebody sitting there giving it back to him. Now, they may not like it, and the president called for her to be fired, which is great press for her. Congratulations. Best thing you can do is have Trump come after you in the media, right? That's the difference, is he's got somebody at least playing off him. So now it's not a sermon, it's a conversation, it's a debate. It's framed completely differently just by having somebody there that'll push back a little bit. Late night TV, and we learned this with Letterman in the end, and I think Letterman's a brilliant comedian, but he got into this at the end. Colbert went all the way into this at the end. If you go lecture, if you go bully pulpit, if you turn it into a sermon, which you can because the spotlight's on you and the audience is there, and it's just you go into cringe preaching really fast, really quickly. And that's what got Colbert, and we've seen that go with other people. And Gutfeld's kind of avoided that because he has those people sitting there giving it back to him. And, panels get cringy too, and I've been on some bad panels, trust me. That's why I don't do a lot of them. I don't like panels. If you got 5 people all saying the same thing, it's bad. It's not just bad politics, it's bad TV. It's bad entertainment. And it's got to be entertaining first and foremost.
What's funny about, I'm thinking back to, because I have watched more Fox News in the last 6 months than I had watched maybe in my entire life beforehand. And I watched The Five quite a bit, which is still, I think, the most popular show on cable news. And I mentioned something a while back on X about the fact that I thought Harold Ford Jr. was the kind of guy I'd like to hang out with, like to have a beer with. He seems like a cool guy, right? And he pushes back on the rest of the panel, but he's not a jerk doing it.
That's the trick. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, and he's pretty even keeled, low key about it. And one of the responses that I got on X was yeah, but he's too milk toast, and what you want is you actually want a Tarlov character who, if you disagree with her, has the potential to make your skin crawl.
Correct.
And I thought that was an interesting observation because I don't agree with Tarlov on 98.5% of things, but I don't get the feeling that she would make my skin crawl if I were in the same room with her. I mean, she seems like a likable person.
She's smart, very smart.
Yeah, likable and smart, and pushes back, and is. I mean, she knows that she is outnumbered. To borrow from the name of another Fox program, she knows she's outnumbered, so she's just like, okay, I'll dish it out a little bit, and I'll have to take it a lot. But I thought that was an interesting observation too, is that maybe the Tarlov style is in your face enough to catch the eye of a Trump. Well, meanwhile, a Harold Ford type would not poke the bear so much.
Yeah, I can tell you from experience, and I'm a nobody. I've always prided myself that I can, and there's platforms I wouldn't go on, and I'm kind of selective and kind of keep a tight circle on who I do media with because I don't have to do it, which is a nice space to be in.
And thanks for letting us into your circle too.
No, I appreciate you, but I've literally had days where I did Young Turks in the morning and then published in the Spectator that afternoon. And I take pride in the ability to do things like I can talk to about anybody. And it's funny. I can go on, if I do a Young Turks program, if I'm on with Rashad Ritchie, like I know I'm in the role to be the punching bag. Right? Let's just do this inside baseball because I think it's important for people to understand how their media works. So if I go on Rashad Ritchie's show, which I've done multiple times, and you're in the bullpen segment, which is he beats up the moderate conservative voice, whatever. Conservatives will get mad that I love social media. I'm either way too conservative or way too liberal. Depends on who you are. And I'm like, okay, I'm probably where I ought to be. I know my role. So if I just go in there and start a rock fight, he's going to win it because it's his show, right? Like he's going to win because he can say whatever he wants. He can mute me. He can run me over. I'm the guest. So what do? Do I start out with a rock fight, or do I find that one little 1% grain of agreement and hand him as an interviewee the interview? I got to give the host something back, right? It's one of the things I had to learn how to do in media, especially television. It's badminton, man. You got to leave something dangling for them to hit back at you. Even if it's if you want to have a debate show, I got to throw the jab so that you can throw a hook, to use a boxing analogy, right? Do I give him that one little thing to just de-arm him maybe that much, and now we're having a conversation? And I've seen it happen over and over and over again doing media, whether it's somebody from the right that's really mad at me or somebody from the left really mad at me. Okay, if I get this one little thing, I'll agree with them on it and then build off it and see if they'll work with me. And most of the time they will. And that's why nobody with a not great for face TV like me gets opportunities, because I can adjust and I can give them what they want. So what you're talking about, kind of big picture, is really important, because the last 10 years is really, as much as it's changed politics, I think it's exposed media a lot. People have a la carte media now. They have Substacks, they have YouTube channels, people are going to seek out what they want and nothing else. That's why the networks are having trouble. We've got the data. They're watching what they want and then they leave. The idea of the TV in the house being on for 4 hours straight and it just gets left on, that's gone. So media people, you of course, this is us turned up to 8 or 9 from the 6 or 7 when we're at the dining room table, but you better have a level of authenticity to you. It can't just be all shouting. It can't just be all Trump is the greatest thing ever or Trump is evil incarnate, because that just gets drowned out really, really fast. And everybody starts turning it off. And there's people that want that, but that audience has already got that. They're not going to come find you for that. That's just the truth. Can you be authentic? And I think the people that are being authentic and the people that have some good faith across the spectrum, the people like you're talking, like Gutfeld and Tarlov fighting back and forth, that makes good TV, because they both know how to play the role. Gutfeld isn't dropping a nuke on her so that she'll never come back again, because that'd be dumb for your business model. And I'm sure they're probably friends off camera and whatever. Like I have friends in this business that people be like, how do those two people ever get along? I've seen this happen, man. You get two people. I was in DC one time. I won't use the name. Two people are the main characters of the day on Twitter, hating each other, calling each other every name in the book. And I saw them at a restaurant in DC sitting together, laughing about it. Like, that stuff happens all the time in this business. Like, don't take it too seriously. Understand your role, have good faith, and then your body of work will keep up with people. When things like Iran goes bad, my phone blew up and I'm having the busiest media day I've had in years, because everybody's like, oh, I want his opinion on it. So I did everything from West Virginia local radio to a podcast, TV, Canadian media, local media. I did Fox 5 last Friday night in DC. You get those opportunities because people are like, I want to know what you think about this, because you're going to say something nobody else is going to say, or you'll say it in a certain way. And the consumers need to demand that, and all that other nonsense will start going away because there won't be an audience for it. And we're already seeing, especially in the MAGA media sphere, that's why they're getting louder and more obnoxious. They see the contraction coming and they don't know what to do, because you got to have an off-speed pitch, man. Can't just be all fastballs.
Yeah, and you wonder a little bit about the whole. I heard them called the. This is not my term. Someone else was talking about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, and there was somebody else in this group. They were calling them the woke Reich.
Yeah, which
I thought was amusing. It might have been a James Lindsay thing that came up, but yes, I think you're going to have all of these types that are looking for another lane, and they also don't have an off ramp for a post-Trump media landscape. And I want to ask you about that too, because one of the things that you're a West Virginia native, and so you have some thoughts on J.D. Vance and what I guess we could say is his LARPing as a hillbilly. Is it possible that he could be viewed as Trump 2.0 by the media, or is he just not that, for lack of a better term, not that authentic a character for that to happen?
I just did a rant on authentication, and then you throw JD Vance at me, so now you're going to test my integrity right off the bat. Thanks a lot, buddy. Friends hold friends accountable, I guess. I have very well documented feelings on JD Vance and that stupid book he wrote. You can find that all over media, video, television, podcasting, my own platforms. So my bias, let's just put that on the table. My opinion of the man as a human being is pretty low right off the gap. Having said all that, let's look at his career arc real quick. Remember, when he wrote that book, timing's everything in life. That was when the Trump stuff was just starting to catch fire. We were coming off of the Obama years where the center right didn't really know what to do because they never figured out a way to really get at Obama. I think the conservative media was starting to go way hard right, and the moderate GOP didn't want to go with them, but they didn't want to go with Obama, and they got stuck and they didn't know what to do. You can pull this up. The book tour for Hillbilly Eulogy was a lot of National Review. It was a lot of center right, center left, moderate, Cato Institute. They had him at AEI, I think. Like that was the market for that book. All this stuff that now he kind of derides as being the squishy middle and all that, that was the intended audience of that book. And by his own admission, he was in law school. He didn't know really what he was going to do. The woman that wrote the Tiger Mom book was his advisor and teacher and said, you need to write your life story because now you're not just another lawyer. This is his own version of events. I'm not making... He's like, now you're not just another lawyer. This is your life story, which is a compelling life story. My problem was not his life story. My problem was the appropriation of culture as if that was an explainer for all the ills in the world to make him look better. That's my beef with it, because he is not. I am a hillbilly. I lived in Braxton County until I was 10 years old. Then we moved back up yonder into the big 1,000 square foot house that my grandmother, because we were taking care of my grandmother and my parents have lived there still. I don't need to give my credentials to anybody. He grew up predominantly an hour north of Cincinnati. He's nowhere near Appalachia, but he used that as a stepping stool, literally stepping on us to up his thing. And the thing about it is, as soon as Trump came along, everything, that whole book tour just got memory hold, where he's this squishy, moderate, hey, up with people kind of stuff. And he just spun it all right into the MAGA movement to fit into it by his own admission. And he had, and at least he owned it. He came out and said, yeah, I didn't like Donald Trump, but I've come to see the light. And he did that whole routine. He's going to have problems. God, I don't want to get into the next election, but this whole thing, look, the idea was that it was going to be the party and Trump people's idea was it was going to be Vance and Rubio for 2028. Rubio may be able to blow that whole thing up. Are they going to be able to coexist? Would they be on the same ticket? Are they going to run against each other and split the party right back up? Because remember, the Republican Party didn't coalesce around Trump. Trump brought in people that are only going to vote for Trump. We've got 3 elections now, and we've got a couple midterms. There's 4 to 5 to 6 million people that'll show up, vote for Trump, and you'll never see them ever again. We know that now. They're not going to vote for either one of them. And the coalesced GOP around President Trump was not a coalescence. It was he brought those people in, and everybody that couldn't stand him left, and whatever's left is 100% Trump. Is that transferable to a J.D. Vance? No, not all of it. Is it 80% transferable? Is it 85% transferable? If it's 80, 85, 90% transferable, and you can get some moderates, now you have an electoral coalition that could win. If it's 60, 65, 70%, and you can't pull more than 20% of independents, that's not an electoral coalition. Presidential elections, the Nikki Haley one's the glaring example. Everybody, when Nikki has, go look at my tweet. I said she doesn't have a coalition. There's no coalition in the GOP party for Nikki Haley to be a presidential nominee. You know, that's why Trump, once he got going, it was like, oh, you're not stopping this. He has the coalition. Once he jerked the evangelical vote away from Ted Cruz at Liberty. Remember, Ted Cruz announced at Liberty, and then 2 weeks later, Jerry Jr. Falwell's got Trump on stage saying he's my guy, right? Once that happened, he had his coalition. He was going to win. What's J.D. Vance's coalition? What's Marco Rubio's coalition? You're going to have a lot. You're going to have 25 people run for that nomination. You're going to get 10 or 12 on stage for the debates. You know, the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world are probably going to run. You know, Kent's probably going to run. That's the reporting on why he did what he did when he did. He's probably going to run. What's the coalition? He's going to have an authenticity problem, number one. But
this is Vance you're talking about.
Vance is going to have an authenticity problem, but he's got a coalition problem where, look, the biggest news item of the world, where was he yesterday?
He was in Hungary, right? Yeah.
He's in Hungary. Why is he in Hungary? Orban, why? Well, because everything in politics is power structures and money. The power structures and money that support J.D. Vance dictate that he has to be on the same page with the Orbans of the world. And no, I'm not talking about Russian corruption and stuff, although there's some of that in the fundraising stuff. I'm just talking about media outlets, the people that prop him up. That's a big deal to them. That's important to them. Orban's going to lose. He's going to lose that election probably pretty handily unless the Russians really screw with it. But J.D. Vance was there on the day that we're getting a ceasefire to a shooting war. You see the problem he has. Trump didn't think it was important for him to be there. He's off doing a political calculation. And that wing of the party was subservient to what Donald Trump was doing in the Middle East. Now, he may be able to jujitsu that and like, look, I had distance from this, but I don't know. So he's going to have an authenticity problem. But with all these candidates, and we're going to do this over and over and over again for 2028, what's the coalition? Because the Trump coalition does not exist without Donald Trump. It does not. No, there's no such thing as transference. You're not going to get a Donald Trump. What's the new coalition? And can the Democratic Party field somebody that enough moderates, independents, and the Hispanic vote that's swinging like a pendulum back and forth right now? Look at that Wisconsin election. What had the Latinos ran, not walked back to the Democrats in massive numbers. You're going to see that in the Rio Grande, places like that. That's what to look for. Who's going to get that coalition of independents and Hispanics and those voters? Can they get it? I don't know who's going to do it. I think you're going to have a messy primary, and if the GOP may have a messy enough primary that the Democratic candidate may win by default just because of the mess.
And let's talk about the Democratic candidate because the guy.
Just one of them.
Well, I guess the Democratic candidate that is getting the most buzz right now, and it's both good and bad, is Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
And lately, yesterday's admission by his wife that she accidentally ran over her sister as a child, and then used that to explain that some of the people who are in high security prisons also may be there because they didn't mean to do what they did. This is not good for Gavin Newsom. And no. I guess my question is, is he the kind of person? So on the one hand, you do have, and I've got friends on the left who have said, I think it's time. I think we got to go with the straight white male. And if you go with the straight white male and you're looking at somebody like Newsom, or it's Andy Bashir, or it's, there's a whole host of other, Shapiro, well, straight white Christian male was the other piece of that. And
he's
then
Jewish,
you have to ask the question, right? Whether or not Shapiro could be elected, whether
Pritzker's
or not
going to run.
Pritzker could probably buy his way into relevance, which we've seen here in Illinois. Specifically Newsom, is he? I've maintained that he's smarmy enough to actually get elected. Do you agree with that?
Boy, is that a damning indictment on our electoral. Okay, let me nutshell my general, and then I'm going to go to the specific of the case you just brought up. I've never been a believer in Gavin Newsom. I always he is very much he's a media darling, but he has the same problem Kamala Harris had. And I know Kamala Harris also had the gender and race piece. And if you don't think that's a real thing, you're not paying attention. It is a real thing. But that wasn't her core problem. Her core problem is the same problem Gavin Newsom has, although Newsom's not as bad as it is. These California politicians, you're a system quarterback to get to that level because there's no opposition to it. And part of the no opposition to being a system quarterback is you don't learn, you don't get vetted, your weird, cringy stuff doesn't get cleaned up ahead of time, or you don't know to hide it or whatever. And then when you get on the national stage, all of a sudden all this stuff comes out. To your point, the story is tragic with his wife. They were the two girls were 6 and 8 at the time and got ran over by a golf. It's just one of them. In my family, that's one of those that we're just not going to talk about this. It was a horrific thing, and let's not talk about it. It's almost like that thing at church is like, okay, the new person at church doesn't know how this works, is going to talk for 15 minutes about all the horrible things and then go, and Jesus saved my soul, God praise, and sits down. No, that's not how that works. That's not how you explain this. I understand she was trying to be empathetic. How do you go from Kimberly Guilfoyle and marry somebody that's just as crazy, but on the opposite side of the political spectrum is amazing? I don't even know how he did that. I don't think he's nationally viable anyway. I know a lot of, he's handsome. He's not good at this. He's not. And by this, I mean, we just talked about electoral coalitions. What's his coalition? Smarmy media people that are losing influence rapidly. The Democratic Party's got for all the bad, remember, they're as unpopular as everybody else. The Democratic Party has a real problem. Newsom's going to be really popular in the media, and the normies can't stand the guy. This is not my opinion. I've got the data. Yeah, I know he won in California as governor. California's different, man. It's just a different electorate. And when you put him on the national stage where it's not that California system where it kind of hides a lot of your flaws, and you can just have, the greased back hair and the big smile and the photogenic grin, the national media is going to chew him to pieces. Because it's not, if it was the old network system, you could see where he would get the Bill Clinton treatment real easily, right? If you're old enough to remember that, look it up, kids. The media made Bill Clinton president, because that was their last big hurrah before the internet, and the internet took him down, which that's another microcosm for another day. The old system would totally Bill Clinton this guy and make him the great. Oh, he plays saxophone. We can ask him what kind of underwear he wears, and that used to be a big crisis in America, believe it or not. That world's gone. The modern new media world is going to chew this guy to pieces because the smarminess is going to get him. He's just, when you get past the facade of smooth, he's weird. You got past Barack Obama's smooth facade, he was cold and he was academic and he was calculating. People don't mind that in their president.
No, they don't mind that at all, actually.
They don't mind that. When you got past the facade of George H.W. Bush, you got a folksy, homey guy that you're okay having a beer with, and you think he's not the sharpest guy in the room, but he gets along with everybody in the room. That's what you got underneath him. Clinton, I've shook his hand, you shake his hand and make sure you got your watch still. Okay. Trump, there is no facade. You get it 100% all the time. That's all you get all the time, right? When those are the things that the general population, look, presidential elections are popularity contests. Sorry, they are. He's going to get chewed up. I don't think he's going to project well. I think the national media is going to rip him apart. And then it's going to be a matter of, if the GOP tears itself apart, can one of these other candidates on the Dem side not get dinged up too much in the primary to offer themselves to the moderates and the Hispanics and the other voter groups that decide elections in America? That's the decision they're going to have to try to find. I don't think the moderates and those folks are going to go for Gavin Newsom under any circumstances. And there's more stuff to come. I'll just leave it. There's more stuff on him to come out if they really want to get to him. They need to get his wife off TV rapidly, but she seems to like it, which is also a kind of a red flag. You don't want the spouse wanting TV time. That never works out well. But I will come on if he gets inaugurated president, I'll come on and say I'm wrong. I got real doubts that he can be nationally viable despite the media blitz he's been doing.
So I know we've just got a couple more minutes, and then you've got your media hit number 26 of the day.
I don't know what we're on. It's been a long day, brother.
So give me some final thoughts. If you could do the crystal ball thing in a couple minutes of what we should be looking for in Iran.
Okay, the strait's number one. Is it open? Is people getting charged tolls for it? Where's that money going? If they keep up what they've been threatening, where they're like, we're going to change the money exchange system to Chinese currency, that's a big deal, because the oil market runs on the U.S. dollar and the euro. Watch for that. Number two, is these going to be real negotiations, or are they just a facade to kind of strong arm everything to a new status quo and the negotiations go away? What do I mean by that? Well, remember, we were negotiating with Venezuela, and then we just kind of let it go, and the next dictator up took over, and it's a little more malleable, and we're going to get a cut of it, so we're just going to let it go. Pretty much Venezuela's running exactly how it always ran, right? Is that what they're going to try to pull here? And we're negotiating, but it never really goes anywhere. I would watch for that piece. And then there's the international piece to it. Is the GCC and Iran really going to redo the axis of the Middle East? Because remember, part of the GCC thing is they see Syria as an investment. They want control over whatever happens in the Palestinian conflict as an investment. The GCC, again, this is least bad options because this is adult conversation. There's no such thing. If the Middle East and the Saudis and them go from tangentially supporting terrorism, which they did for a long time, let's call it what it is. Okay, 9/11 hijackers, we really want to go down that road. If they go, we're not going to do terrorism anymore because it's bad for business, let's just do greed. If greed makes a better Middle East with less terrorism, that's a good thing. It creates 6 more problems down the road, but it is a good thing. But that's what you're seeing. Assad fell. They're like, we're going to invest a lot of money into Syria. We don't want it being a terrorism dictatorship state unless it's a dictatorship that makes us money. Is that what they're going to try to do in the Middle East broadly? Iran's not going to play ball on that, but that would also marginalize Iran, because if Iran is the only purveyor of terrorism now, everybody's like, stop doing the terrorism, and they start cracking down on it. That's the piece long term. If you really want to have peace, as close as you can get peace in the Middle East, for the podcast audience, I just did air quotes. If you really want peace in the Middle East, you're not going to get peace because they're good guys. We may get terrorism is bad because it's bad for business, and greed can maybe bring peace, which, by the way, that's kind of in Donald Trump's wheelhouse. So he kind of, that's his groove. So maybe it'll work. I hope it works. I hope the president succeeds in that. That's the one I'm watching long term. Is good old fashioned greed going to get the Middle East out of the terrorism bit of it? They're always going to infight. But if you can quit getting to exporting terrorism, that's a win for the world. And if greed gets us there, it creates more problems down the line. But dealing with greed problems is usually less bloody than dealing with terrorism problems. Those are the 3 pieces. So the Strait of Hormuz, which is an economic problem, who's going to control the money and all that. Those are the things I think we should watch going forward. Don't believe the rhetoric, which we just learned. Watch the actions. Who's in charge of these negotiations? Do they actually go anywhere? Who's controlling the strait? And is the GCC countries going to become the dominant player in the Middle East, which it looks like they're going to?
Andrew Donaldson, thanks so much for joining us. And we'll be sure to do this again, at least to check in, if not during the Gavin Newsom.
Oh, gosh.
Not too.
I thought we were going to do some sports. I had my NIL rant all cranked up. Greed is good and NIL is good, and people are just going to get mad about it. But we need to do that one somewhere in here, buddy. Have a little bit of fun.
Yeah. That'll be an over a beer conversation, I think, too.
Fine, coward.
Yeah. All right. Andrew,
good, man. This
so much.
is good. Let's do it again.
All right. Thanks.
Yes, sir.